Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. With this video, we are going to be building from scratch a Nightwatch napalm ogress that is scaled with Saryn and toxic lash and roar. It's especially pertinent to have a build like this, and it's a slightly different build. If you check Overframe, those builds aren't really optimized, and you have a lot more flexibility than you think. You're going to see a lot of viral heat or other meme builds. Um, but if you really want to get the most out of Saryn specifically, she does have a bit of a unique build. Okay. Um, and this topic was brought up with a commenter on the Slashes Meta video, Brian Cottrell, 2195. I'm sorry if I butchered that. Was talking about how he's seeing, let's see, Zada's Whisper builds. I don't know. Obviously, Zada's Whisper is an interesting interaction, and if you're going to be running, like Buffer Saryn, it could potentially have some use, especially because we're going to be using dots and AoEs. Um, but let's just go over the standard Buffer build so we know what it is. Because I've seen a lot of those Nightwatch Napalm Ogress builds, um, and there's always some issues with them. Because this is the build where it's mostly used. This is how you speed clear defense missions. And it's particularly useful because looking at the Baruch Prime relics, um, for those that don't know, uh, defense missions and spies that are fishers and any mission where you can potentially get into the void. So if it's a void mission, it's an easy relic farm. So captures, defense, anything where you can speed it up by being better at the mission speeds up your relic farm. Um and what is it? The sabotage is particularly good. Spy missions anywhere when you do it will has the chance of giving you relics as well. So ideally, you would want a defense fisher in the void or a capture fisher in the void if you are trying to speed open stuff. If you like sitting in survivals, a Mott fisher, you will literally leave with more relics than what you started with. And one of the things I personally used to do was just uh, do ESO for a couple rounds, RNG some Radiant Relics, rad a bunch of relics, so I used all of my Void Traces, and stay in a Mott Survival if there was a Fisher, until I completely regenerated my Void Essence, leave, fill everything back up again until I'm down to 0, or on Void Traces, not Void Essence, Void Traces, drain everything back down to 0, and just go right back into the Fisher. Um, so these sorts of missions where it's like a defense, you can leave with more relics than what you went in, because remember when there's the round reward, and in the void, it's the direct replacement for tower keys, if y'all remember what that is. So the reward pool, it's very dirty in terms of what it focuses on. So it's not like you're not going to be able to go, like, say, to Lua, Apollo, the disruption there, and get a majority of axes. So it's like 50-50 generally. It'll be two types of relics for this each mission, and you can toggle back and it'll toggle back and forth on the reward pool. So you'll get like Lith Mezzo or Mezzo Neo, and I think there's one that's half Mezzo, half Neo, half Axie sort of thing. So you're not going to be able to stay in one mission and burn lith and get lith back. So this is the utility behind it, because when you're farming and trying to pop relics for prime parts, it helps a lot in terms of how many prime parts you get to be able to speed up the mission in some way. And defense is one of those things you can do where you speed everything up. Obviously, you're going to have to worry about like killing stuff too fast, because they have to get corrupted. So you can actually get the void traces out of them to be able to open your relic. But we're going to go over a build specifically for a Roar Toxic Lash Saryn on a Kuva Ogress that is heat based Nightwatch napalm build. So very, very specific interaction. Because the modding is slightly different. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is equip our Nightwatch mod, because that's what we're testing. Now let's get some basic information, because we need to know what we're starting with. Okay, those guys are dead. My Panzer is not equipped. Let me check. Yep, no companion. Okay, so 2. We just need some base dots. So 4, 6, 7. It's 7 each tick, but we're getting 17 on 5, 17 on 5, 14, and 17 on 4. Okay, the number's going to change a little bit. Let's just confirm. Alright, so 4 damage, 6 damage, 7 damage because the armor is going down. 5 ticks is giving us 17. Okay, so we have about 17 to 20 damage once the armor is reduced 50%. Because you have to wait for the armor to get shredded after 2 seconds to see what your real damage is going to be. Because of the play style with this weapon, you are firing a ton of times. So you are going to be regularly reapplying the heat dot. So now what we're going to do, because apparently there's some debate on this, this mod affects the dot damage on Nightwatch Napalm, not the initial damage. It affects the dot, right? Because with a heat dot, it's base damage, modded damage, body multipliers, and modded damage. Hold on. Base damage, crit tier, modded damage, faction damage, and body multipliers are our main multipliers to increase a single dot. Then you have multi-shot, right? So let's just test this, because I've seen people say that this doesn't apply, and the wiki, the way it explains it, they have cleared it up. But it's base damage. The damage of the Kuva weapon, which is specifically what we're using, does increase the base tick. So it says damage output can only be increased by base damage mods, Serration, Heavy Caliber, and Faction. The AoE cannot crit. But it does have the disclaimer, damage is increased by a Kuva weapon's bonus damage stat, because it's counted as base damage. So it's like, this base damage is what Serration scales, right? It's not able to deal critical damage. And down here it says Napalm has a 68% chance to proc heat, ticking for 50% of Napalm's damage per second for 3 seconds. Pretty basic. So it's a heat dot with a half duration. Okay. The heat proc damage is affected by heat mods. Status chance is not affected, but we can increase status duration. So, food for thought. I got a thing. Okay. So we've reset the simulacrum. We're going back in. We have Nightwatch Napalm, and we're just going to check. Hold on. I'll get it eventually. There we go. So we have a 90 heat mod plus Nightwatch napalm. Now, before we were getting 17 to 20 dots after the shred. Now let's see what we get. So we have 6 at 57, 7 at 57. So the damage is increased. So obviously we're going to mod for this. Now, a lot of the work is done for us. Because base damage counts, so we're going to equip Primary Merciless because we're a dot build. We need ammo back. So you're going to equip the best mutation mod you can. We are dealing an AoE. So Firestorm. Multi-shot for more bullets, which means more AoEs. Okay. We need base damage. And we need faction damage. Okay. Because it's a heat dot, and we're scaling the dot entirely. Well, wouldn't you know, most of the work is done, and the build's pretty much locked in place. Right? Like, just like that, with some simple logic, we've applied 7 of our 9 mods. So what do we put in the last 2? Okay, and this is conditional, and it has a lot to do with what multipliers we have available. Now, the thing is this is going to be specifically interacting with Toxic Lash. And modded damage on the weapon for Toxin increases Toxic Lash damage. So Toxin's going on here. Because we're doing specifically a Saryn build. Well, we've only got 1 mod spot left. And to be honest, this is entirely to taste. Okay? Some things you can do. Heavy caliber, the accuracy kills you a bit. You can do heavy caliber. Serration does give you a good chunk of damage, but this basically is just going to double your damage running Serration heavy caliber. So it's 100% increase, give or take. It's a little bit less, actually. For each one of these mods, it's a 50% increase. It's a little bit over 100% compared to what we're getting from Merciless already. So it's a little more than double. So it is worth something, but this comes at an opportunity cost because we've modded for base damage 3 times. Is there anything else we could potentially mod for? So for the time being, I'm going to take heavy caliber off because it is our 1 flex slot. We have to look at the rest of the weapon and see what we could potentially get some use out of. Well, one of the issues with this weapon is the maximum ammo is 7. So max ammo, or a maxed ammo mod. Hold on, not that one. Ammo drum is definitely a viable slot for a more comfy build. Okay. This way, when you reload, you're not reliant so much on picking up ammo so fast. Because with Prime Sniper ammo mutation, it's going to convert 92% of secondary ammo. It's basically going to give you another ammo. So you're going to be picking up 1 ammo from your regular primary. And when you pick up a secondary, it's going to give you another one. Right? So we'll have twice the chance to pick up ammo. Or every time there is an ammo drop, we'll be picking up ammo, basically. So it doubles our ammo pickup rate to effectively 2 over large numbers. We're picking up twice as much ammo. But you can still, if you're spamming shots, especially if you're running a defense, you're not really moving around a lot. And more importantly, you actually have to, in order to speed up the defense, you have to spam shots. So one of the things I like to do is sort of ignore the ammo max and just run reload. You get your shots out quicker. You can keep your DPS up. You can reapply dots faster. But it's not a full 1-to-1 reduction, right? Because we're going from 1.6 to 1.1. And we can see with some simple math, if we do 1.6 minus 55%, if this mod was applying perfectly, we would be at 0.72 reload. So 70% of a second, 3/4 of a second. But because we have Merciless on here, it doesn't help. And none of the other arcanes on Merciless help us, because we want to plant our ass in one spot and nuke everything. So this is a creature comfort, but it's not necessarily game breaking to not have this. It's just a little bit longer reload. It's the taste. I do use this regularly on my build right here. But this is a non-toxic lash build, so we're building for toxic lash. And I noticed that with 1.1, running regular missions actually feels pretty comfy. Okay. It's pretty comfy. It's not a big deal. 1.1 doesn't slow you down. The range on this thing is massive, 11.38. So you're going to be applying dots far and wide. So this would be more of a quick mission running mod. But we want to plan our ass because we're doing a defense, or we want the option of scaling Toxic Lash and the heat dots even more. So what do we got? The giveaway for this is actually in the interaction with how the mods apply to Nightwatch Napalm and to Toxic Lash. Even if these mods are combined to give you gas, Nightwatch Napalm will still be scaled by Hellfire, the 90% mod. Even though we have gas, Toxic Lash, even though we have gas on, will still be boosted by Infected Clip. So the fact that this is gas doesn't mean a damn thing. Okay, we're still getting our scaling. You don't have to have a hanging heat mod with this build. And because of the interaction, the specific interaction with Toxic Lash and the mod, we can pretty much just leave it here, which means we really do have a flex slot. So you could run heavy caliber. Sometimes if I'm trying to speed clear, I've rolled a Riven. Doesn't mean you're going to have a Riven. Maybe you do. But wouldn't you know it, it's a 2-stat for heat and damage, which is literally what I need. I mean, obviously status chance would be a little better, right? But that only benefits the initial hit. And I'm proccing gas, so I don't care, right? So it's not a big loss. Multi-shot would be good. And status duration. So damage, heat, status duration, and like minus zoom or some garbage would be like a god roll for this specific setup with Saryn. But let's not involve Rivens in this. So the other option, and the giveaway is the interaction with Saryn's Toxic Lash. Toxic Lash is a final damage multiplier. And this is where some of the confusion comes in, because you'll see cryo rounds here a lot. The viral heat setup, right? You'll see this a lot. You check Overframe, this is what's on there a lot. But the issue is those are old builds. We have things like Panzer now. So viral is free. So I don't want to mess with this. For a slight loss in alpha damage, right? Because I go down to 634, but with primed cryo, it puts me up at 762. I gain bonus damage against armored enemies that I wouldn't otherwise have because the viral damage gets boosted against Grenier, but it gets heavily reduced by armor. So it's not. It requires multiple procs to really get going. But raw damage, I get that bonus up front. And the heat on top of that does have a slight bonus against the health pool. So I'm actually, instead of getting 75% on the health, but it has to go through armor, I'm getting the bonus damage on the armor, their defensive scaling, and then getting a slight bonus against the health pool. So it's trading one for one. Generally, if you're going for like a one shot, you want to go corrosive against Grenier, because the armor is the thing that's making them tanky, not the health pool. So reducing the armor is significantly more important when dealing with Grenier scaling. But more importantly, to go back to this interaction, the initial hit on Toxic Lash will allow you to get a higher Toxic Lash dot. Okay? And not only that, this also fixes any potential for a hanging heat dot. Right? Because we're back at 2784 on the radial. And 109 heat weighting on the direct hit. The radials are big damage, right? So we actually gain a lot of raw damage against Grenier, which means our toxin dot, when we smack something, because it's a guaranteed proc, right, is going to be significantly higher. So this would be the recommended build for a Toxic Lash Saryn. Now, let's talk multipliers, and it's going to require shooting some baddies. Actually, let's take a quick look at the Saryn build. It's not very interesting. It's exactly what you'd expect. Strength duration. This would be an example of something you would want. The Brief Respite mod, you could take it or leave it. If you really, really, really enjoy this, legitimately, if you super enjoy this setup, there is a justifiable use of a triple Umbra set here. It makes you tanky. You get to run through missions practically unfazed, especially if you're running like Grace. Saryn gets up to, 1337 health and like 700 armor or something. Yeah, 712. Actually, even more. I don't have the third umbral. So it gets even more. So you're very tanky, and you can run Guardian Grace. Because the... Hold on, I lost it. Here we go. For a more mission-friendly build, if you really want to make this your bread and butter. This is definitely Steel Path viable. You can just run through missions and basically do whatever the hell you want. Especially at Steel Path levels. Everything's a trash mob right now. So, what you're looking for is not necessarily this mod setup, but this strength duration setup. And ideally, you would even want a little bit more. One of the creature comforts that you can potentially hit. But I wanted Prime Flow, because I run the synth set, and Equilibrium. Equilibrium is going to be pretty solid. You can get rid of Flow and run Constitution. Reason being is one of the tricks you can use to make the drain on this significantly more palatable is because our duration is almost a minute. Actually, it's close enough. It's like 59 and change. Which one is it? I think it's Naramon. It is not. I'll have to find it. I'll post it in the comments. There is a node that gives you a free cast every 60 seconds. I'll have to find the node. I'll post it in the comments. But there is... a node that gives you a free cast of an ability every 60 seconds. And because Roar is just about a minute, you can make that your free cast. And everything else has really long buffs on it. Going to take Venom Dose for the additional corrosive, and because we're basically out of options, we're actually going to take Arcane Rage. On Headshot, 15% chance for 180% damage. This is additive to Serration. But on Headshot, 15% chance for 180% damage to primary weapons for 24 seconds. It's additive to Serration. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to use the Augment for the 1. We are going to cast 1. We are going to cast... So, hold on. It's going to be Roar. Then we're going to cast Spores. Then we're going to cast it again to get the buff. And then we're going to cast Toxic Lash. Okay? And then we're going to smack something. But let's see what the damage is first. Alright, we got our nerds. $32, $38. It's not looking too good. Our initial hit was 1,000. Okay, now we're getting 1135 heat dots. 1200s, 1340s. Now we're getting 2400s. 4200s. They climb the more dots you get. Alright, 8500. You get the deal. It's a heat dot. You're applying it. And that is with no merciless stacks. So let's just go ahead and kill those guys. And we're going to start adding multipliers. Alright, our multipliers are all stacked up. That was an 82k. I'm seeing 34ks. 200s. Okay, that was a 5,700, or sorry, 57,000 raw hit. I'm having trouble seeing the dot. Alright, 3,200. I saw, or 32,000. I saw a 29,000. Alright, 4Ks on the big dot, 100K, 80K. So it's potent. And we still have additional scaling, because we haven't put our pet on. So we have our Panzer, which is our free viral, because we like damage. And to deal with the weird interaction, the fight, the simplest way to deal with it, there you go. You see the 4 viral stacks. Let the Panzer hit, auto, and that will help spread. They still fight though, but it's significantly better. Get our viral stacks up. Alright, 15k. Still not as good as it could be. Alright, here we go. 30k raw damage and 112k dot. That was, I think, 5 or 6 23k dots. Or 23k raw hits. So we're still not really getting the dot yet. And the dot scales. Remember, heat stacks, right? And one of the issues is the enemies are going to die pretty quickly. It gets easier the higher the enemy gets. Because the spores will begin to take over instead of the Panzer. Ideally. Especially if you're running some range. But in this case, the Panzer will take over with the range dump statted. And you're going to rely on the corrosive raw damage on Venom Dose. And you're just going to keep the buff alive as long as possible. But this is a basic scaling Saryn build where there's no real issue with anything. You're going to have to figure out shield gating. That's part of the reason why I was running Primed Flow, is because our one form of shield gating is going to be Molt. And we're only going to need Brief Respite, but it's going to hit you for 77 energy each time you click it. But the good news is because instead of the spores on Saryn taking over, it's going to be the Panzer. It means you're going to be getting the synth set bonus health orbs as much as possible. So it ends up being kind of a wash. Alright, so let's talk about some alternatives. As unironic as it is, Stormbringer is actually kind of a flex slot here. Because this only benefits you on the initial hit. I don't care about it too much. Obviously, the initial hit is nice, but what we're trying to do is scale the dot. So this is technically a flex slot. I know I said it before. The mod I would actually end up recommending is Continuous Misery, because the heat dot on Nightwatch Napalm is 3 seconds. The AoE is 6. So for the 6 seconds of Nightwatch Napalm, it's constantly attempting to refresh the heat dots. So you can either deal with the RNG and fire the weapon a bunch of times, which is what you should be doing, and picking up ammo as you go. You can then stack the heat dot, and with Continuous Misery, because the heat dot is only going to be 3 seconds long once Nightwatch Napalm ends, you can then double it to 6 seconds. So this is an option also. Or you can go with the corrosive build. So to each their own. If you're comfortable spamming and you don't find ammo to be an issue, this is a higher DPS build up front. If you're having trouble with ammo, say you don't have prime sniper ammo mutation, and you're just using a vigilante supplies, Continuous Misery is an option also. So that would be the difference. Those two mods swap back and forth. Because with this, you can spam a little bit more. You're not worried about the dots needing to stay alive, because you're going to be getting reapplications. But if you don't have the primed ammo mod, the ammo pool is an issue. This is going to allow you to spam a lot more. And one of the other tricks you can potentially do, provided somebody else is running Brief Respite, you can actually run... not this one. Rifle Scavenger. And I think you need one other person to run this. So 2 Rifle Scavengers, and everybody will be able to pick up an entire magazine of ammo every time they pick something up. So your primary ammo pickup, your secondary, the secondary ammo, each time you pick something up with ammo mutation, it will boost you to the point where you're picking up a magazine. It's 2 or 3 or something like that. It's literally the math. You need plus 200%. So however you get there, like 2 of them, right? So that's food for thought. So those would be your alternatives if you want to like really abuse it, like especially if you're doing like an arbitration squad. It can be pretty nasty. But anyway, those are the multipliers. That's the build specific to Saryn. Because if you were to check Overframe right now, it would not look like this. It'd be very similar, but you'd be seeing a lot of viral, and right now we just don't care about it. And obviously, if you have a Riven, you're looking for damage, heat, and potentially status duration to give us the Continuous Misery bonus back. So that would probably be the closest thing to a Ogre specific, Nightwatch napalm specific Riven, or obviously multi shot, right? So damage, heat, status duration, multi shot, um, and I guess potentially a reload speed could be a nice soft second tier, right? So food for thought. Anyway, I hope this helps. I listed a couple of alternatives. Obviously, change out the faction mod to whatever the enemy is. Um, if you don't have faction mods, okay, if you don't have faction mods, one of the things you can do is just add vigilante armaments, and this will be a nice bonus amount of damage. It's going to give you more multi-shot. Um, but there isn't too much you can add on here. You could also put fast hands back on. Obviously, I can't slot that right now because of polarity issues. But fast hands could also be an option here if you don't have faction. Obviously, faction is going to be significantly better. Um, but this would be an option also, doing fast hands. If you only have, like, if you modified your, or if you formatted your Kuva weapon up a little different. I just threw a bunch of Vs on because damage is V, right? But anyway, I hope that helps clear up some of the issues. Provided proof that Hellfire, the 90 mod does scale the napalm mod. Not the initial hit, but the dot itself still receives the same consideration as a heat dot originating from the weapon. But Nightwatch napalm only gets scaled by base damage and faction damage. So, pretty easy to mod once you do the test for it. You saw how it is. But anyway, y'all have a blessed day. Take it easy. Thank you for watching my video.